Assalamu alaikum guys, I hope everyone is well. I'm just going to do a quick Q&A inshallah. We haven't done one of these in a while. And see if you guys have any questions, Dawah related questions that we can sort of address inshallah today. Let's see if I can... Okay, let me just double check this. Walaikum salam everyone. Hope you guys are good inshallah. So I'm just trying to bring up the questions on a bigger screen so I can see what's going on inshallah. So just bear with me. So like I said, inshallah, if you guys have any questions, bismillah, you're more than welcome to ask inshallah. We haven't done one of these in a while. Do you have your own book like Hamza and Muhammad Hijab? I've been working on a book for a while. It's currently with an editor who's doing a third edit on the book itself inshallah. So that should be ready at some point inshallah soon, but it's not ready yet. So let's just quickly run this up inshallah. Okay, bismillah. Switch this audio off here. Brother, are we allowed to ask philosophical questions? Yes, you can, inshallah. You can ask philosophical questions as well, inshallah. Especially if they're related to the Dawah. Let's make this shorter. Here we go. Question, why don't you come to Saudi Arabia and give us a lecture? I actually visited Saudi about 3 years ago. Alhamdulillah, I had the privilege of going to Umrah and it was a beautiful experience. I don't know how practical, I don't know if it's even allowed to do, public dawah activities there. You may need to get some permission, but inshallah, maybe in the future, when things open up a bit more. I think the restrictions for Umrah have lifted in Saudi, but inshallah, when things get better, we'll definitely do that. Inshallah, would love to do that. Explain about Neanderthals, other hominoid fossils. Okay, so Truth Lover asked a question about Neanderthals. It's not my area of speciality. Brother Sabur is the one that normally deals with questions related to evolution. However, I think there's a few points I'd like to make on this, or highlight some things, because even recently, yesterday, I had a discussion with an atheist who came to see us, and this topic did come up. And to be honest, you don't need to be a specialist to be able to deal with the question of evolution. Well, there's a few ways you can look at it. Firstly, if it's a problem for someone accepting Islam, so evolution is a problem for them and it's an issue for them and it's a barrier for them, then what you can do is what you should do is firstly highlight to them that evolution, even if you assume for the sake of argument that the Darwinian mechanism is true, what science tells us about evolution is true. All of this is true for the sake of argument. It doesn't disprove God's existence, right? It's not evolution or God, right? I mean, this is a false dichotomy. This is an incorrect way of looking at things. Even if you assume evolution was true, doesn't mean there's no God. It doesn't deny God's existence. It could just mean that God used the process of evolution to bring about the development in the creatures on this earth. It's as simple as that. But then you can also look at it and tackle it from the perspective of the philosophy of science, which is any theory, any scientific claim can't be said to be 100% true. Whatever the claim is, whatever the theory is, it's just the nature of science. It's based on induction. There's always room for error. There's always room for improvement in data. There's always, there's always the possibility to gain more research, gain more data, and it's always possible that the data that you further acquire, the more research you do, that you will come across things which counter your previous conclusions. And that's why no philosopher of science would ever say that any theory, any scientific theory is 100% true, no matter how strong they may claim it is, no matter how much they may present it as an absolute fact, especially in textbooks in schools. And the theory of evolution, in particular the Darwinian mechanism, is presented like this on a popular level, even in education these days. It's not 100% true. It's, you can say it's 99% true, 98% true. There's always room for error. There's always room for there to, new data to come about, which changes your perspective. So as Muslims, you can work, when you're doing the science, as the brothers say, when you're doing the science, work with it. It's fine. Work with the theory, but it's not an absolute theory, and it doesn't affect your deen in any way, shape, or form. But from an Islamic perspective, from an orthodox Islamic perspective, we don't believe that human beings evolved like maybe, possibly animals evolved, other creatures evolved. It's very possible, but even with those creatures, there's a very interesting book by Stephen Myers. It's called Darwin's Doubt, and he has some lectures on this on YouTube as well, where he highlights this phenomenon, what they refer to as the Cambrian explosion, which is basically when they look in the strata of rock, which basically is, if you like, a type of history, or archaeological history, because you're looking through the layers of earth, and the further down you go, the further back in time you go. And what they're noticing of what the Cambrian explosion, and it's appeared in a few places in the world, shows is, well, it's the whole idea is upside down, because the general idea is you go from simple life forms to more complex life forms. That's the evolutionary idea, but the Cambrian explosion shows the opposite. More complex structures appear first, almost out of nowhere, and then simpler life forms emerge from that. So that's very interesting. So even when it comes to animal evolution, where from an Islamic perspective, the Quran is silent on this matter, so we can say or acknowledge that animals evolved like they're telling us, scientists are telling us they evolved. But even when it comes to animals, there's questions. There's data which opposes the rest of the body of data and the ideas that they have. So it's very interesting. There's a lot there. But when it comes to Neanderthals, or let's phrase it like this: when it comes to what could have happened, okay, let's look at it like this. It's an interesting sort of thought experiment. We know from an Islamic perspective that human beings, Allah created Adam with his own hands. So from an orthodox perspective, we don't believe humans evolved like possibly other creatures may have evolved, okay? So what could have happened? It's possible, one possibility is that Allah created many other creatures before the human beings. Some of those creatures that were on the earth prior to the humans coming here were human-like in some way. Maybe they walked on twos, right? Maybe they shared certain physiological features with us. And then they were wiped away, and then Allah created Adam, sent Adam down to the earth. And now when you look back through the archaeological data, and the more they look into this and they find fossils, maybe they will find fossils which, because of what I've just said, possibly, if this is the case, I'm not saying it is, it's a speculation, but if they were to find fossils of human-like creatures, they will jump to the conclusion, because they want to complete their narrative, they will jump to the conclusion, oh, it's this is the missing link, these are our ancestors. That's the way they will connect the dots from a naturalistic perspective, from the perspective of methodological naturalism, right? Because they will have to. That's how they'll connect it. But it's very possible that they were creatures that were in some ways like humans, but not humans, that existed before on the earth, that Allah created, and then they were wiped out, and then humans came in. Now, just because you therefore find these fossils, one way of interpreting that data would be that, oh, look, it's the missing link. Another way would be, well, it's a totally different species that was similar. And when it comes to, and Sabur mentioned this as well, when it comes to similarities in DNA, he even mentioned, I mean, we have, our DNA is very similar to the DNA of a banana, the fruit, right? I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, but the way all of this information is presented on a popular level, it makes it seem like, there's a narrative that certain or a lot of scientists are trying to push, especially atheist scientists these days. And there's an image, there's a narrative they're trying to create in the minds of the common person that looks at this stuff. And they're quite successful in doing that. But if we know these things as Muslims, it's good for us, because we can now navigate that space and work with it, inshallah. Okay, let's move on. Sorry guys, I always struggle with going through these questions in an order, so I'm like jumping around, so be patient with me if I miss your question and come back to it later. So someone asked, Jazz asked my position in evolution. So my going off what I've just said, my personal position is, at the moment, based on is the orthodox position, which is, I believe Allah created Adam as a unique, separate creation, that we didn't evolve from other life forms. But like I said, there could be many things that could have happened around that period. Other creatures could have been in existence which may have been similar to humans in some way, and then they were wiped out. It could have been that way, but that's my position, and I don't think it's far-fetched from an Islamic perspective, because once you know that Allah is able to do all things and He's all powerful, well, then there's no problem. Allah could have created the other creatures through the evolutionary process, and then chosen to create Adam as a unique creation. There's no problem with that. Allah is able to do these things. It's a problem for someone that doesn't believe in God, specifically that doesn't believe in Allah, and that doesn't understand the names and attributes of Allah. Then yeah, you run into a problem, and then you have to try to account for the development of life in more of a naturalistic, orderly way. But it's not an issue. That's my position, and Allah knows best. What do you think? Okay, Nasir says, okay, I think you're asking someone else a question. So do you know, Rabia says, do you know the evidence that proves that the early church fathers didn't believe in the Trinity? I can't cite you any specific evidence right now, but the last module I studied for my degree was on Muslim-Christian relations, past and present, and I did go through a lot of documentation on the development of the Christian doctrine. And one thing, like I can only summarize it for you now. I can't cite you specific references, but one thing that emerged, which you guys probably already know, one thing that came across was that the early Christians, in early Christianity, there was a lot of varying opinions in regards to Jesus, Isa alayhi salam. There's a lot of different opinions. There were many different groups, especially after he left, that had varying beliefs about Jesus. You had offshoots of different groups of the Jews who had their own opinions and perspectives. They were. You can divide the groups into some broad categories. Um, but one thing you realize is that the idea of the Trinity and the idea of the Trinity specifically was something that was developed over time. It wasn't there in the beginning. You know, the debate was about, okay, what is the nature of Jesus? Is he man? You know, is he a prophet? Or is he more than that? Is he divine in some way? But the idea of the Trinity was something that developed over time. It wasn't there from the beginning. And you can see historically the Roman influence on this idea of the Trinity as well, because of the ideas they had, you know, as being pagans, and the gods they worshipped. And the idea of the Trinity is not unique to Christianity. It's been there. It's even in the Hindu tradition as well. They have conceptions of the Trinity, and other civilizations had similar ideas as well in regards to deities and gods that they believed in. So it's very interesting when you look at the history. So hopefully that sort of gives you some insights, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, my friend. Friends, I have this belief that all religions are man-made, and we need to accept that we don't know everything. And religion tries to pretend we know, but we don't. Okay, so there's a few things here. Numer, I don't know if you're if you're putting Islam into the mix as well, but see, what you can say that, you can say all religions are man-made, but it's quite a big claim, and it requires you to have done a lot of research on this as well. The issue is, or when you actually, because I was speaking to the atheist about this yesterday, because what was really interesting about this atheist guy was that he was practicing Islam. He was benefiting from the practice of Islam. He was enjoying it. So it's a very interesting case. He was praying, he was fasting, he was doing all of the things Muslims do, and he was finding meaning in this. But he didn't believe in God. And you know, one thing I asked him, and I said to him, I said, look, shouldn't a question arise in your mind that if you're practicing Islam and you're finding benefit in it, that there must be some truth to it? You know, how can you find such utility in a way of life which originated over 1400 years ago, and you don't find that type of fulfillment in anything else, any other system, even in the 21st century? You know, you would assume that if religion was just man-made, then as we progress in other things, learning from previous generations, then people that quote unquote make up religion would make up religions that are better and better as time goes by. So you would expect to find the best religions in the 21st century. And you know, it was something he did think about, and it got him thinking, because it is, I mean, if you think about it, look, it's, when you look at Islam, when you study Islam, one thing that becomes clear is that Islam is very comprehensive in addressing all of the fundamental questions we have as human beings. It provides answers, clear answers, coherent answers, and the answers don't contradict each other. The concepts, the ideas that Islam gives us don't contradict each other. They go hand in hand. This balance you don't find in any other worldview or philosophy. So I could agree that other religions, yeah, I would say there's many religions that are man-made, and there are many religions that man has altered and changed throughout the course of history. That's what we find today. But when you look at Islam, it's a totally different case. We have the original texts, which go back to the Prophet ﷺ. We have copies of the Quran, which go back really close to the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And that's secondary. That's the secondary mode of preservation. The primary was the oral tradition. That could be corroborated. And you know, it's preserved. So one thing you can't do is say, okay, this Islam developed over the centuries. That doesn't add up. The only thing you can do is you can question, well, what the Quran, which was given to the Prophet, man-made or not? Now, when you study Islam, when you study the Quran, if you do it sincerely and honestly, you'll come to the conclusion, well, there's something else going on here. This is not something a man can produce, especially in 7th century Arabia. It just doesn't make sense. And this could be validated. For me personally, one of the strongest arguments is the coherence of the Quran and its message. It can also be validated through the miracle of the Quran, the challenge of the Quran. You know, the Quran openly makes a challenge to the Arabs several times. Produce something like it. The best suited to meet this challenge were the Arabs at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. You know, because like every language, Arabic is also going through a process of change, alteration. You can say it's degrading, like every language degrades. Now you have slang and all of these. You know, you have modern standard, and you know, you don't have that level of Arabic that was there at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So if the people at the time couldn't meet the challenge, how do you expect someone today to meet that challenge? And people have tried, not that they haven't tried, they have tried since the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and they failed. Tried and failed, tried and failed, tried and failed. That in itself is a proof. You know, that is an evidence. And these are things that we need to seriously consider, inshallah. Okay, let's see. When am I going back to Speaker's Corner? Mohin Khan asks, I don't know. Looking at the state of Speaker's Corner, and it makes me cringe, you know, to a great extent. I mean, it's a mess at the moment, brothers and sisters, honestly. The stuff that's happening there, you know, the people that are going, you know, and to be fair, there's some, mashallah, some very experienced, extremely experienced brothers that still go there. And alhamdulillah, you know, they go there, because if they stop going there, then that place is not worth even going to or watching videos of online. It's a disaster at the moment, Speaker's Corner. So, but maybe when the whole COVID situation is better, I may go every so often. But I don't think it's, generally speaking, I don't think it's a good representation of the Dawah. It's entertainment, definitely. You'll be entertained when you watch Speaker's Corner videos. But I don't think it's a good representation of Dawah. I don't think we should learn how to give Dawah from Speaker's Corner. You should watch videos of brothers like Brother Mansoor, Brother Hashim, you know, some of the other brothers that are there, that have been there for many years. Hijab, mashallah, has some good stuff, you know, and he does, you know, he composes himself well in Speaker's Corner, mashallah, keeps himself composed and you know, controlled. There's definitely brothers you can learn a lot from in Speaker's Corner. You know, may Allah bless them and increase them. Some of the brothers, it's like Mansoor and Hashim, are, you know, they're specialists in Christianity, mashallah. They've been studying it for probably decades. So there's a lot you can learn, but don't take the general videos from Speaker's Corner as, you know, the touchstone of the Dawah, that this is what Dawah is. It's not. What about the genetic evidence that all points to common descent? To be honest, Jazz, I haven't looked into the genetic evidence. I think Subur may have some videos on his channel, so you can check it out there, inshallah. So I won't be able to comment on that. So Numair Khan says, best way to explain something from nothing. Tell people you are from United States of I think you did United States of America, and how it doesn't exist. Yeah, there's many ways. I mean, again, this was one of the big things that came up yesterday when I was speaking to this atheist. One of the things he kept, like, we got to the point, okay, where did the universe come from? Let's think about this rationally. First, he wasn't willing to budge off the idea, well, there's no evidence, we can't say anything about the origins of the universe. We've eventually got to the point where we worked out and understood, okay, he's holding this position because he believes science is the only way to truth. So after dispelling that, we moved on to, okay, let's be reasonable about this. Let's use common sense. Let's use logic. Let's think. We can think as human beings. How do you explain the origins of the universe? Could the universe come from nothing? And he was willing to defend this. I don't know why, but he wanted to defend the universe came from nothing. You know, so after a while, we finally got him to understand, okay, well, why this position just doesn't make any sense. And if one was to assume something could come from nothing, well, you can't really have a discussion, at least a logical discussion with such a person, because you can believe anything then, you know. I mean, something coming from nothing is a very simple, intuitive, rational concept. Out of nothing, nothing comes. It's as simple as that. You know, out of nothing, nothing comes. So the universe has to have come from something, and then you can work logically through this and you can ascertain some traits of this cause, and eventually make it to the point where you can now correlate this with what Allah says in the Quran in regards to who He is. So that's one way of sort of logically helping someone work through the origins of the universe, and coming to the conclusion that there is a creator, there is God. So I've jumped again. Okay, let's go from here. Jazz says, evolution is widely accepted in science. You think the PhD scientists are messing around? I don't know if messing around is the right thing. I think there's a lot going on here, guys. Look, you can't ignore the fact that scientists have there's always human bias present. Scientists that do the science have their own ideas, have their own beliefs, have their own views. Especially atheist scientists would definitely want to ensure that the data correlates to the narrative, and that as time goes by, the that's been pushed is further strengthened. And that bias is going to have an impact on how you connect the dots, how you connect the evidence. That's what's going to happen, And it's interesting because there is a lot of social engineering going on here as well, because in textbooks, the Darwinian mechanism is sold to people like it's an absolute fact. But even amongst the experts, there are different models. Sabur, I think, highlights 8 or 5 different models, competing models, that try to explain the data. Those ain't mentioned in most textbooks, high school textbooks. So there's a lot more going on. The more you look into this, you see, and what you expect. This is the nature of science. Science, like we said, science isn't there to give you 100% absolute facts. It's a method that tries to understand the physical world, what exists, and tries to make sense of it. That's it. So once you understand this, it's not really an issue. It really isn't an issue. Okay, let's see about this. Brother, does science require faith? And if so, how can we prove this to an atheist? Science, it depends what you mean. If a scientist is saying that a particular theory is highlighting a fact of reality, so take the theory of evolution as we're speaking about it now, the theory of evolution, and he says this is stating a fact of reality, an absolute fact, that this is how evolution happened, then between the theory and his statement, there is a leap of faith. Because there's always room for error, right? The theory isn't 100%. So for him to say, yes, this is how it happened, there is a leap of faith there. And again, another scenario is if someone was to turn around and say science is the only way to truth, that again is faith. And it's an unfounded faith, because that statement itself refutes itself. When you say science is the only way to truth, it's an ignorant statement, firstly, because it's a method that deals with the observable world, things that can be picked up by the senses and observed. There are many other realities, many other things that we need to believe in or acknowledge that are beyond this. Morals, science is amoral, it can't tell you about morals, etc. So if someone makes this statement, so there's a lot of ignorance behind this statement, but the statement itself is problematic, because as soon as you say science is the only way to truth, well, now you've made a truth claim. But how are you going to now validate this statement scientifically? Right? Because you can't measure this statement. The statement, science is the only way to truth. You can't measure this statement in a test tube. You can't stick it into a test tube and measure it. I mean, and therefore, the statement, science is the only way to truth, is a false statement. It doesn't add up. It's self-refuting. Do I know how to read Arabic? Yes, I do. Alhamdulillah. I'm not the fastest reader, but I can read. Alhamdulillah. Yes, free your mind summarizes nicely. I believe so. I feel like they are assuming a lot of things to fill in the gaps. There is some truth to evolution, but I think it's too early to conclude everything they say as a fact. Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of filling, rational filling that goes into how these dots are connected and how the narrative is presented. So that's definitely taking place. Bertrand Russell himself said that, he didn't say the exact words, but to paraphrase, he said science is an attempt to discover by means of observation and reasoning based upon a particular facts about the world. So what you're doing as a scientist is you're observing the world, you're collecting data, and then you're reasoning upon the data. That reasoning is not free of bias. That reasoning is not free of prior ideas. That reasoning is not free of narratives that you're trying to fulfill. It's always going to have an impact on your sort of reasoning and the conclusions you come to. Okay. Let me make this bigger if I can. Let's see. I'll make this bigger. Okay. So I can see your questions more clearly, inshallah. But is it possible for you to post your live streams once they finish, as I find them helpful? Yes, these are published. What happens is with live streams, especially if I do them through StreamYard, they take a day to upload and appear on the channel. So just be patient, it will come up the next day, inshallah. It just takes a bit of time for some reason. Okay, alhamdulillah. How can you be sure that of the afterlife? I've always hated how religious people have this arrogance. Says Cream Pie says, how can you be sure of the afterlife? Only based on faith. It's okay to say you have doubts. See, the problem is all of the beliefs we have as Muslims are not based on blind faith. There's a methodological way that we work through this. Once you come to the conclusion that God exists and that God is the author of the Quran, then it logically follows that whatever God, this all-powerful, all-knowing being, has said must necessarily be true, because it's coming from the ultimate source. Therefore, that's why we believe what we believe, and that's why we believe in the hereafter, the afterlife, and what's going to happen in the hereafter, etc. Okay, so it's important to understand this. So what you need to do before you start tackling specific concepts and ideas within Islam is to come to the foundations first. Really have a look at the foundations. Okay, if you don't believe in God, start there. Does God exist? Once you've covered that base, is the Quran from God? Once you've covered that base, then at that point, whatever God says, it's true, because it's coming from the source of all truth, al-haq, the truth. So it's coming from the one that knows everything, the one that's all powerful, the one that knows us best, our Creator. And therefore we believe what God says. And this is not blind faith, this is reasonable faith. It's actually intelligent faith, right, if you like. But when it comes to the afterlife, look, I mean, I was looking at this the other day. Just look at the research that's there on near-death experiences. Now, I mean, it's beyond the point where you could just dismiss them, right? There's a lot of research still being done on near-death experiences. It's been looked into a lot. It's been studied. It's being studied. I mean, if you're a person of science, which most atheists claim to be, then we'll look at the data on near-death experiences. At the very least, what the data highlights is that human consciousness, as they refer to it as, you can call it the soul, whatever, continues on after the body is dead. Now, how long this, according from a scientific perspective, how long this consciousness continues is anyone's guess from a scientific perspective, right? At the moment. But it's also interesting because the data suggests that there is a separation between the consciousness and the body during these near-death experiences, because in many cases you have accounts of people that have reported what doctors have been saying in another room, or what their own family members had been saying in another room where they were not present, right? There's accounts of people looking down on themselves from up above and hearing conversations, hearing the names of the doctors, and when they come back around, when they're resuscitated, they speak about these things, and they mention these things with such clarity and detail that you can't, and it's confirmed by the doctors and the nurses and the people that are present there at the time when these people were technically medically dead, right? So it's very, very interesting. I mean, you can't deny the evidence there now from a scientific perspective. So there is definitely something that's going on. Now, when it comes to near-death experiences, exactly what's going on, we don't know. Because look, they're not dead. These people aren't dead, meaning that they're resuscitated. They come back, right? Their heart may have stopped beating, their brain may have stopped functioning, but they're resuscitated. So what they're experiencing, are they really experiencing what happens when someone dies, full stop? I don't know, maybe not, right? But they're definitely experiencing a realm which is beyond the physical, the material, right? There is a detachment of the consciousness from the physical body. There is an awareness which continues where the body is dead. That in and of itself should really get people, even atheists, to reconsider what happens after death and take these things very seriously. And by the way, we always hear of near-death experiences and all of these positive experiences people have. There's cases of atheists that have become believers after this, but you don't really hear about the negative experiences that some people have in these near-death experiences. So it's very interesting, this whole sort of subject. Gaming says, should one being Muslim study philosophy as a minor at university in Pakistan to be able to counter these prevalent philosophical ideologies, as in feminism, liberalism, etc.? To counter these ideologies, you don't need to study philosophy. You can counter these arguments, these ideologies, or point out the flaws within these ideologies by simply looking into and studying these ideologies themselves. Sure, you can say that their ideas are philosophical. All ideas are philosophical to an extent, but you don't need to study traditional Western philosophy to be able to tackle these ideas. One thing I would recommend people to study is, if you do want to study something, study logic. That's probably a better use of your time, because it really depends. I don't know what they teach in Pakistan when you're studying philosophy as an introductory course, but there a lot of philosophy today is pointless, to be very frank and honest. A lot of these ideas that they share can cause loads of issues and problems, especially if you don't have your foundations right, if you don't have your base right, your Islamic foundations right. So it's very important to have that in place first. But reasoning, logic, if you can study logic, that's good. It's something that every human does. Even before the Greeks codified it, humans were reasoning and using logic. It's a gift from God. It's something we do as human beings. So that's something we should definitely look into and refine within ourselves. Our ability to reason, think critically, use logic. All of these are good things. How to start studying for Dawah? AM Rafinul, I think that's how you say your name, bro. Apologies if I butchered it. But yeah, best thing to do if you want to learn how to give Dawah, go to training.iera.org, and on the website there's a free Dawah training course you guys can do. It's a brilliant course. Once you do the course, you'll be able to engage in Dawah, inshallah, confidently. Not that you can't do Dawah before doing the course, but it will really give you the tools that you need, inshallah, to effectively give Dawah. give dawah. Yeah, how to give dawah. Hudzi asks as well, same thing, bro. Training.ira.org. Okay, so for you to post your live streams. Okay, I read this already. Okay, concerning existence, there are robust arguments like contingency. Yeah, contingency argument is a very powerful argument, definitely. Look, there's some really powerful arguments for the existence of God. You've got the contingency argument, you have the kalam argument. If you guys are interested in arguments, definitely read Hamza's book, The Divine Reality. You're going to find the best form of these arguments in his book. Because one thing he does beautifully is he always links it back to the Quran. And he shows the Quranic foundations for his versions of these arguments. I mean, that's what we need to, if you want to learn arguments, read that book, The Divine Reality by Hamza. It's brilliant, it's phenomenal. But don't forget, look, there's a really interesting book. Let me see if I got it here. I don't have it here. I think it's called Reason and Rhetoric in the Quran. It's based, the inspiration for this book, it's a modern book, but the inspiration for this book was Imam al-Ghazali's book, The Just Balance, as is the translation in the English. And what this author highlights is that the Quran has its own logic. There are logical arguments in the Quran, there are syllogisms in the Quran. Allah shares these things with us. You know, I think Imam al-Ghazali pointed at 5 measures, as you refer to them as. And this individual in his book, he points out that there's over 33, I think, different forms of syllogisms and argumentation in the Quran. So the Quran has its own unique logic and reasoning. And that's why I've noticed when people really read the Quran regularly, you see that it refines their way of thinking. It refines their way of reasoning. Naturally, you'll see this. And it's very powerful. And they may not even realize that, you know, why this is happening. But I think one of the reasons is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is obviously, Allah is the creator of the human intellect. And when Allah engages you in the Quran, it refines the way you think and the way you reason. It's very powerful. You know, so if you want to learn, the best thing if you want to learn how to reason and how to think critically and how to be logical, read the Quran. Read the Quran, because you will naturally learn this when you read the Quran. When did I come to? Amuzam says, when did I come to the conclusion in my life when I knew Islam was the truth? For me, it was about around over 10 years ago now, I think, when I realized that, because I was asking a lot of questions in regards to the meaning of life, the purpose of life, all of these types of things, and I was looking for answers. And when I read the Quran, I realized that this was the truth. It has to be from the Creator. Just the way the Quran makes sense of the human condition, the way it addresses us, the way it reads us, the way it advises us. You know that this is from a source that knows you better than yourself. That's for sure. You know, and at that point I knew this is the truth. So that's how it happened for me. Okay, let's see. How do you reconcile predestination and free will? I've got a video on this on this channel with Brother Yusuf Ponders. Definitely watch that video on predestination and free will. But just in a nutshell, the way I see it is that you don't need to reconcile it. And the reason I say this is because once you understand that the human intellect has limits, and therefore you understand that your reasoning has limits and that you can't understand everything. That's what makes us human. You know, only Allah knows everything. And when you also understand that we're talking about 2 different spheres here. When you're talking about Allah and you're talking about us, this reality, this existence, these are 2 different spheres. Unless you've experienced both spheres, you can't make a decisive conclusion and say this is a contradiction. All you can say is, I don't understand how Allah has determined everything and knows everything, and how at the same time I have free will. Both are true. How they reconcile, it's something beyond us, right? But what we need to focus on is, how do we fulfill our side of the bargain, which is, okay, how do I now engage my free will, and how do I become responsible in doing what's right? That's key. You know, that's what we need to focus on. Because there's not many, but there will always be some areas or some things that would just be beyond the human scope, the scope of our intellect and our ability to understand. This is something that the philosophers will take contention with, and they won't like this idea, because they want to believe that the human intellect can understand everything. Well, we can't. There's always things that are beyond us. This is one of those things. Up to which level of knowledge, Brother Ibrahim says, can someone start refuting atheism? I mean, don't think of it like this, bro. You know, don't think of it like this. Think of it, okay, what do I need to know to give dawah? And when we give dawah isn't primarily about refuting atheists or refuting Christians. The dawah is to invite people to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to call people back to Allah, so people know who the creator is and know why they were created. That's the objective of the dawah. It's as simple as that. It's not about refuting atheists. If you want to know how to respond to atheists and common atheist contentions, again, the Divine Reality book is sufficient. If you read the Divine Reality, because it also covers atheist contentions, atheist arguments, you'll know enough to be able to deal with atheism adequately, inshallah. I would recommend you to read the book called God's Undertaker. I've read the God's Undertaker. I've actually gone through it more than once, many years ago, but by John Lennox. It's a brilliant book, really, really good book, and I love the way he argues in that book. Very simple, to the point. It's a really good book. May Allah guide him. May Allah guide John Lennox. He's very close. I mean, when he debates with atheists, when he debates with Richard Dawkins and so on, he smashes them. Up until the point where the trinity comes into the picture, and that's when he starts to struggle. May Allah guide him, man. Okay, so sad. Islam is not for the West, says, so sad you believe in Islam. I pray that God guides you, my friend. Because once you really, and I really encourage you, whoever you are, just to really please take a serious look at the Quran, study Islam seriously by yourself, objectively, and then see where you stand after that. A lot of times we can pass judgment very quickly based on what people say, based on hearsay and based on the views of other people. That's what we do in most cases. Even us Muslims fall prey to this. We come to conclusions and beliefs, just in many cases based on what other people are saying. But we should make the effort to really look into things ourselves as well, inshallah. Guys, be gentle, inshallah. Don't be aggressive, because I can see some of the comments. Look, remember, we claim to be the followers of the Prophet ﷺ. We claim to be Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ, one of the things he came to do was perfect human character. We need to try to display, especially to those that are ignorant, that don't know about Islam, the best of characteristics. So be gentle with people. People need love, brothers and sisters. Yeah, we live in times where there's not enough love. Everyone's occupied with themselves and very selfish. So be gentle with people. Always assume they're ignorant. They don't know. That's why they're saying this or saying that. Give them the benefit of doubt. Be kind to them. Because remember, the objective of the dawah is not to express our anger or to win a debate or an argument. Is to really try to win hearts and minds, so that we can effectively remind people of who their creator is and why they were created. You don't want people ending up in the hellfire just because of the way you behaved with them. I mean, how would you feel about that? Putting everything else aside, that's not where we want to end up, guys. We don't want to have that regret. This person ended up in hellfire, potentially. May not, because they may never come across the true message of Islam. Allah knows best. But you don't want to be in the position where someone ends up in hell just because of the way you treated them and that pushed them away from Islam. So be gentle, please, inshallah. Ameen to your du'as. Okay. MashaAllah, Khalid says, I want to start a Dawah team in my country but lack confidence and I don't know many. Look, brother Khalid, few pieces of advice, bro. If you got the intention, do it. I don't know where you are. Maybe you can tell me where you are and then I can better advise you. But if you have the intention, do it. Step 1, go to training.ira.org, do the Dawah training course. Step 2, try to get a small team together of 2 or 3 brothers if you can. And step 3, just go out and do it. Just start. The best way to learn is through experience. And just start small, a few hours a week, set up a table, hand out some materials, and that's the best thing to do, inshallah. Have you started working on your own book? Yeah, I'm working on a book. It's been in progress for close to 2 years now, I think. It's with the editor. I'm hoping to get the 3rd edit back this month at some point, and inshallah it will be out at some point. I also, have an intention to do another project on the core concepts of Islam. A sort of a handbook for young Muslims, inshallah. But inshallah, make dua that Allah facilitates that. So that would be, I think, something beneficial for people as well. Could you explain why atheists can't have objective morality? We didn't answer this question. So when it comes to morality, it's a very big thing, brothers and sisters, and an important question, because look, at the end of the day, whether you're atheist or you're a believer, we're moral creatures, we're moral beings, right? Morality is important to us human beings, even to atheists. That's why you have atheist humanists, although that's a contradiction, but you have atheists who are humanists. So when it comes to morality, the argument is it goes something like this. Basically, morals, what are they, right? What are morals? We need to think about this. They're so important to us as human beings. But what's the origins of what is the origin of morals? How do we ground morals? And what I mean by ground, because whenever you say this is bad, don't do this, that's a moral claim. That's a moral statement. That's a moral act. You're telling someone not to do something because it's bad. Now, that has to be grounded objectively in some way. Because if it was just a subjective idea, well, then what you've said means nothing. Because they can just turn around and say to you, it's not bad, it's good. So it's your subjective idea versus their subjective idea. So it's very important to ground morals foundationally in something solid. Now the problem is, on atheism, you can't ground morality in anything meaningful. All you have on atheism to fall back on is evolution, right? Because atheists appeal to the evolution. That's our origins. And if that's our origins, that's the origins of our morals as well. But if evolution is the origins of morals, well then Darwin even mentioned this. If that was the case, why would you act any different from hive bees? And the hive bees, within the structures, they do some really strange things. I think the mother would kill its fertile daughter, or something like this. I think Hamza makes the example of nurse sharks, where the male rapes the female nurse shark. So if it was evolution driving morality, or the origins of morality, well then our morality would be very different. But we act in ways which actually in many ways goes against the whole idea of evolution. So evolution, and plus, if morals had evolved, then they will continue to evolve. It doesn't ground them in any way. It just makes them subject to change. So you can't ground morality on atheism. You can only ground morality in God. So from an Islamic perspective, we ground morality objectively in Allah. That's it. Simple as that. God is our anchor. and the morals are real. God made us moral beings, and therefore when we understand this is wrong and this is good, this is bad, etc., you know, it's a part of our fitrah, you know, an base understanding of right and wrong. It's there. So it's easy to ground from an Islamic perspective. On atheism, you can't ground it, and it's problematic because if you can't ground morality, well, and if it's just a subjective thing, well, then what value does it hold? How can you, as an atheist, turn around and say your religion says this and this is objectively wrong? You can't. It doesn't make any sense because it's just their opinion. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up inshallah soon, guys. MashaAllah, there's loads of questions. I'm just going to flick through them, see if there's anything new that hasn't been repeated. We have some friends, I think, that have joined us as well, Christian and atheist friends on this live. All right. Southern Mystic, man, you know, may God guide you. Honestly, I see you comment on every single video. You know, may God guide you. You know, why don't you show people the negative aspects of Islam in the world? There's a lot of Muslims, not a lot, but some Muslims that do some really terrible things. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are waiting for these things to happen so they can link the actions of the so-called Muslims to Islam. There is no negative aspect of Islam. I mean, if you really study it and you understand it, there is nothing negative about Islam. Negativity arises when people do things which are wrong, you know, and Muslims can do things that are wrong. They have done things that are wrong in the past, and even today, there's some people that call themselves Muslims that do terrible things. And may God guide them, you know, and may God guide you as well. Okay, let's just go through this. Yeah, look, there's some trolls on here. Just ignore them, guys. No point. I mean, they thrive. You know, the thing with trolls, like, I respect non-Muslims who may come and may have contentions and they have some serious doubts, etc. You know, and I would even give the benefit of doubt to non-Muslims who may have a they've interpreted Islam or understood Islam wrong. It's ignorance. You know, give them the benefit of the doubt. Respect them, treat them well, try to inform them, educate them. You know, all of these things, because that's the Muslim character. We have to treat people and wish for and desire for their guidance. But then with the trolls, I mean, you get some trolls that come on and they just like they're on some another planet, man. I mean, don't waste time with them, guys. Honestly, they're somewhere else. You know, may God guide them. Just make dua for them, because they thrive of your comments. They thrive of you responding to them and getting angry with them. They love it. They love it, honestly, you know. So you actually, you know, it's like a meal for them. So you're feeding them. Don't feed these guys, man. Honestly, just ignore when you see a troll, ignore the troll, because the troll only exists because of us. You know, if we ignore them like they don't exist, they will disappear. They'll lose the meaning of their life, what they do online. So just ignore them, inshallah. My battery's about to die as well, guys. So we'll wrap up here, inshallah. May Allah bless you guys. I will speak to you guys. There's some really interesting questions. Please do come on. I'll try to do another live maybe sometime next week early. So please, if your question wasn't answered, inshallah, please come back next week and we can go through them there, inshallah. May Allah bless you guys. I'll speak to you guys next time. Assalamu alaikum.